You might be wondering, why am I showing you the back end of this new Bugatti, the most expensive and fastest Bugatti ever built? Well, because it's absolutely beautiful. And coming up next on the Fast Lane car, we're going to talk with the designer of this car, the supercar. Don't make that a hypercar because it goes 261 miles an hour. It has 1,500 horsepower and it costs over $2.5 million. It's definitely a hypercar. Obviously, we're standing in front of the brand new and perhaps the fastest car here in Geneva. So let's talk about the design. Tell me kind of what was your inspiration and how you changed it from the Veyron.
Well, it was quite a challenge to go from the Veyron to this car, you know, how to produce this next icon for the brand. It's a little bit like movie directors, no? That have to produce a sequel of an already successful movie. And how do you do that and how do you pull that off?
And keep the family resemblance.
Exactly. So I didn't want to go about the styling of this car just creating a couple of fashionable styling lines. I don't think that would do the subject and the challenge really any honor. Therefore, what you see here on this car is a philosophy that we have, which we call form following performance. That means all the stylistic elements all around the car are really based on the technical leap and the increase in power, driving dynamics and aerodynamics around the car, which we can explain and look at when we take a little tour.
So show me some of the elements.
Exactly. The architecture that you see from the front and the headlamp construction and the architecture is really based on a special headlamp that has a direct air intake for performance reasons. For super sports cars, as you know, the brakes are one of the vital things, the front brakes, that need to look after the temperature and endurance of temperature. And the air arrives here, and that's why the headlamp looks the way it does, and to go straight down into funneling of the brake ducts in there, and making the life of the brakes quite a bit longer. When you look at this line, the Bugatti line is probably easily mistaken for a styling line. And yes, it has a certain resemblance and a certain romanticness about it, being linked to Ettore Bugatti signature, or the Type 41 Royale, or even Louis Chiron signature with a C shape. But the actual reason for that line is a performance reason again. The air that is traveling there on the lower body side is relatively turbulent after the wheel arch, and arrives with something like 60 or 70% efficiency down here. But the area up there along the side glass, the air is relatively constant and clean and arrives with almost 90% pressure in this upper area. And this gives this complete line one performance function, and that's why the line and the design looks the way it does in side view. And then when we look at the rear view of the car,
which is, I think, one of the nicest parts. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous.
It's certainly a very strong signature, this single beam taillight that we have there, which is housed in one complete piece of aluminium milled from a solid block. But it works stylistically with a cutaway rear end. Now, this cutaway rear end is nothing revolutionary in motorsport and in supercars, that's clear. But for us it is vital because in our geometry it creates a sub-pressure zone in this area. And together with these ducts up here, which is a sandwich construction into the engine lid, it sucks out all the hot air of our engine compartment. And as if you know our power plant, it creates so much more energy and temperature that the temperature management in this whole rear area of the car is the vital thing for our car, and the management to extract the hot air out of it made it a key design element also then for a win-win situation, engineering and design.
Let's sit down inside, maybe you can walk me through. I'll have you sit in the driver's seat.
I think it follows the approach of the exterior. As you can see, stylistically, the center line over the exterior of the car shoots into the interior, carries the center console, but also carries the interior lighting and carries the roof module in, and is at the same time also the structural most important component for the interior monocoque. In layout and in architecture, you find, just like the exterior, a shift towards a more dynamic representation of our complete car. You know, when we speak about Bugatti, we speak about beauty and beast. And the complete project, technique-wise, exterior styling-wise, and also interior styling related, shifts more towards the dynamic appearance of the car and more towards the beast character. Therefore, the passenger has his own compartment, the driver has his own compartment, and only the components that we share together are linked on this rather slender line, and everything else in user function has really moved to the steering wheel and to the driver command that you're sitting in, like the launch control, the chassis setup, the engine start, the car menu for car information, and the media information. And then what you see in the center of the screen, there are your two displays, one display mainly for car information and for media information. In the center is an analog display that shows you 250 kilometers per hour at 12 o'clock and 500 kilometers per hour at 5 o'clock. And I always call that slide in our presentations always room with a view, meaning we have so many people that never get to see a Veyron or a Chiron ever, but when they come close to the car and they look inside the car, we didn't want them to look at just one empty black hole. They should look at one beautiful instrument, which is so characteristic for our car, and the most important thing about the car is certainly speed and top speed.
I have a friend who has a Bugatti restoration shop in America, and there are not a lot of those. Obviously, there's only a handful of those. And I was in his shop and I was looking at some of the early race cars, and Ettore Bugatti was an artist, and so you look at those cars and you can see the artistry, right? You can see the form follows function, but then you look at the engine and the way that they didn't have to do it where they kind of twisted the aluminum so you get that beautiful kind of shape on it. And this car is really, in a lot of ways, about performance. So is it hard when you have a car that is dictated by performance to bring in kind of that artistry of the original? Was that a challenge for you?
It was a challenge, but also a relief that at a certain point of the project I realized there are so many things around the car that needed technical improvement, and also the bar was set so high for engineering for their targets to achieve that I realized I can base the complete stylistic setup of this car just on that philosophy, that I tailor everything to the performance and link it as a win-win situation to the design, and I can orchestrate the complete car in this authentic manner. And the more authentic a car designer can be in his work and in explanation of the car and the elements around the car, the more there is the chance that this car has a long life to live, and that it still looks good in 5 years, 10 years, or even 50 years down the road when we pass this car on to our kids and grandkids.
Yeah, I mean, you're designing one of the most iconic cars with one of the most iconic brands, with a history that goes back to the beginning of cars. So there must be a lot of pressure on your shoulders to get it right.
Yes, it was, and we've been thinking for such a long time. Actually, I've been thinking since 2002 about what could there be next to the Veyron or succeeding the Veyron, and it took such a long time to figure out with all the proposals in which direction to go. In the end, it was this car. So you could say a lot of my colleagues are doing 10 cars in 1 year, and okay, I do one in 10 years.
This reminds me a little bit of the Atlantic, the way that seam runs down the middle of the car. Was that on purpose as well?
Yes, I think the Atlantic is an asset in our brand DNA that we didn't feature enough so far. It's such a special car, such a masterpiece of Jean Bugatti, the son of founder Ettore Bugatti, that we cherish it in the design department, and it influenced a couple of stylistic elements on this car for sure.
I know there's one, there's a replica of one at the Zeithaus in Wolfsburg.
Yes.
Yeah, so I take it you probably spend a lot of time looking at it and kind of figuring out how to incorporate that into something like this.
Yeah. And we also have contacts through our clients, and one of our grandest supporters is Peter Mullen in California, and he has an original one, and we have a chance actually to look at the original and get inspiration from there, but also have a look how it is done and how things were really on the original car.
All right, it's very hot in here, so I'm going to ask you one last question, and this is the easy one. What's your favorite part of this car?
Probably the single beam taillight
Yeah, it's beautiful.
in the rear is such an ultimate goodbye signature.
Yeah, the front obviously is very reminiscent of the Veyron, but the back is a complete departure. But it's elegant, it's powerful, and I think that a lot of people will be seeing the back of this car. When you think about it, this Bugatti shouldn't be here. According to published reports, Bugatti loses $1 million on every one they sell. It's also a car that is, well, let's face it, how fast can you go on your local road? How fast can you go on the Autobahn? I mean, 261 miles an hour, that's something you may be able to do at an airfield, but even on the Autobahn, that is crazy fast, and yet here it is. So you have to respect the fact that they built it. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fast Lane Car. Check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, beautiful and arty Bugatti reviews. See you guys next time. Ciao.
Or its top speed is 252 miles per hour, where we hit the rev limiter at just over 20 seconds. So there are, I guess, faster cars out there, like the Bugatti and so on, but I think in the real world, whoever is first to 250 is the winner in our book.
Yeah,
That's how we see it. So.